Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, may I say. Welcome to the Unpopular Opinion. I'm your host, David Walker, coming at you with another topic today. Basically, the topic today is school choice, private school funding for people who may want to start their own private schools. I've been doing a little bit of research on it recently. We have something in Alabama called the School Choose Act. So the Choose Act is an act basically offering opportunities for parents to fund kids' education and fund education the way that they want to do school. And I thought about this kind of hard about a couple of days ago. I had a conversation with a lady. Shout out to Rochelle Nobles of Nobles Micro School Solutions. But she was explaining to me about the micro school format. And in Alabama, the micro school format pretty much is pretty the same everywhere across the United States. It's just a little bit different. You have to go into each school's databases and find out how funding is done. But in Alabama, it's $7,000 per child that a micro school or a private school can use to start their own school. And I thought that would be very interesting. So the more I think about how to start your own school and how to do this thing, I want black people, white people, Hispanics, everybody basically to think of it in this particular form and fashion, but more especially African Americans, because school to us has really been getting the short end of the stick. I know in Florida, in certain states, they've been abolishing the studies of African American history and culture. And when you're talking about taking those things away from our students need to know their history. And if you're attacking those ideas and those thought processes, that it may be bad to teach students about racism, about redlining, about things that were detrimental to us as a people in this country. I think that hurts Black people in the long run by not knowing where we come from. I don't think we would know where we're going. I was taught at a young age about African American history and about the different things that formed and made us who we are, a resilient people. And because of those things I learned in the East St. Louis, Illinois school district, shout out to East St. Louis School District number 189 in East St. Louis. And the teachers that I had there, I really pretty much had a lot of African American educators that were very well taught and very well read. But with all of that being said, how would you like to be your own superintendent or your own principal or your own director of education? How would you like to decide what your kids learn, what your kids are talking about in their discussions? What if you would like to be the person in charge of their activities? How would you like to do school differently than public schools being ran today? Well, that's what the Choose Act in Alabama, I keep calling it the Choose Act, but I think it's Ed Choice in Illinois, and with different states they have different names. But take a look at your own state's private school funding chart. I know that in Alabama we get $7,000 per child to teach the way basically that we want to teach. Now, one of the major things I wanted to do for years is start trying to get me a school that basically deals with fine arts, and touches on the fine arts perspective. But another school idea that I had was also African American or Afrocentricity style education, where we taught about basics dealing with African American history, and African American thought processes and things that made us as a people in this country. So either one, I mean, for me, my number one thing that I was getting ready to really do was to really start dealing with the music part. I am a musician by trade. Background is music education. I have a master's in education administration, and with these two things, I basically wanted to run a school. And when I've done it in other people's schools, I see so much flawed behaviors, so many things that are going wrong. The one school that I'm at now, it seems like they don't even like their children in the city. Like, when I go ask for help, they don't want to help the children. They don't want to help them become better. They don't want to help fund their education. They don't want to help them get the things that they need to be successful. When I ask them for something, there's always problem. There's always some type of obstacle that I have to climb over to make them see what it is. And really tell you the truth, the school district I'm at now um, isn't really ran by the smartest individuals in the world. And I hate to say that, but there are people that seem to hate children. Number one, I remember when I taught in Arkansas, there was a superintendent there by the name of Willie Williams. And Willie Williams basically had a filter, and that filter basically stated the school board had to ask themselves a filter question before they took a vote. And the filter was, is it good for children? And I think that maybe the school district that I'm at now may need to take that same thought process. And when they begin to vote, they probably need to ask themselves, is this good for children? But I digress a little bit. The idea to start my own school came from the weird behavior of adults. I didn't enter into education because of adults. I got into education because of children. I wanted to make sure that children had the best opportunities available to them. I wanted to make sure that they actually had knowledgeable individuals, especially guidance counselors, especially teachers of the particular subject area, those teachers that are teaching content, they knew what they were talking about and that they knew what they were doing with students. And that was one of the major things that I got into education for. I wanted to make sure that kids got the best opportunities available. Anytime I go to an interview, and we'll get on that probably in another episode, but when you're interviewing, make sure you interview the school. Whoever's interviewing you, you make sure you interview them. Do not the interview. I know that they call you in for an interview basically to see who you are. No, see who they are. Make sure that you know who they are. Make sure you know what they stand for. Make sure you know what they'll fight for on behalf of students. And if you're into education like I am, because of students, then you're gonna hold people to a higher level of responsibility and accountability when it comes to the lives of students. So basically, how I'm looking at things now, especially with the students that I will be in charge of, if I start my own school, there are things that I've always wanted to do with my students. I wanted to take them on virtual field trips. I wanted to stop school and set up a TV and have people come into their classroom through Zoom or through YouTube or whatever and teach my kids things that they've learned. I've always wanted to have an opportunity where I could take my students on field trips that may seem crazy for a public school, but they're right on time for a private school. Perfect example in my music appreciation classes, I usually get to an area where we're talking about Emmett Till or we're talking about lynching, we're talking about Rosewood and those things. I wouldn't mind taking a trip down to Rosewood to show them where Rosewood is. There's nothing like a face to face interaction when you're doing educational classes. And through the private school learning model, I can do that. I probably won't be able to do that through the public school learning model because it'll be too much red tape. You may have to, because it's out of state, you may have to ask the board's permission a month ahead of time. You may have to have $20,000 on standby to make sure that you get approved. You may have to have 50 chaperones per every one student. I mean, it's some of the things, some of the rules in some of these school districts are a little asinine. But if you could do it in your own private school setting and you can make a more, how can I say, heavy impact on the learning of students, would you do it? So I'll touch back on it. I'm not going to keep you all too long about this, but in Alabama, the CHOOSE Act provides $7,000 per student. So say if you can go out and recruit you 20, 30 students, you have an operating budget of about $210,000 for the year if you could get about 30 students to apply for your school. Your school does not have to be big. It could really start out with 5 students, 5 to 10 students. If you had 10 students times 7, you'd have an operating budget of $70,000 for the year. So don't be scared to reach out and start your own thing. If you could run your own school, what are some things that you would do? What are some themes that you would have in your school where you may want to impress upon your kids a certain aspect or a certain point? Perfect example, there's a young lady I know of. that has a nature school. She takes her kids out on walks through nature parks, and on Wednesdays, I think they make it an all day thing. They camp. They get tents and they camp out in nature, and they get to look at butterflies and wildlife and things of that nature. So my thing is, if you had the time, if you had the opportunity to build your school the way that you want to build it, maybe I need to ask you all this question: what would your school be built like? What would you do? What are some themes that you would um, impress upon your students if you decide to do an all girls school? Would you put things in there just for all girls? If it was an all boys school, what's some things that you would impress upon your students to know and things to learn? There's a lot of things that we can do as far as etiquette classes. You could teach your students how to properly treat each other. Me and someone else had a conversation about this a long time ago about how we would have an all boys school and teach young men how to be young men, especially those with single parent households that are being raised by their mothers. Boys need male mentorship and role models. Don't ever try to block your boys from getting that in some way, form, or fashion. It doesn't always come in the form of a football coach. It doesn't always come in the form of a basketball coach. It could be an athletic coach. It could be a math coach. It could be a band director. It could be an art teacher. It could be a choir director, maybe. But take the time out to take a look at some of those things that are going on in your state as far as that private funding, and maybe think about starting your own private school. If you have a group of students, maybe through your church, maybe through your community, maybe right there in your neighborhood, that basically says that I don't like the way the public school is being ran. Maybe start the school out of your house, out of your basement. Maybe find somebody that'll give you the space. Maybe start it out of your church. These are things that are opportunities that are starting right now. Um, it was started years ago, basically, and this is how I look at the private school funding. I think it was really started for segregation academies in the South. But nowadays, you could have your own segregation academy, I think, in your house if you wanted to. But this private school funding can open up doors for people who want to reach their children and want to really, really do education the way education was started. The way tell you the truth, basically, when I was in education, when I decided to go into education, my whole goal in education was to teach students. It was not to appease adults. So, literally, those are one of the major things I would say that are truly, truly important in the educational format. If you got into education for students, this might be an opportunity for you to maintain your love of teaching, your love of education, and basically how to do this thing the right way. And maybe be a role model or be a beacon, possibly winning a state award or winning a national award for educational innovation. Don't ever be scared of going out on a limb and trying something new. Thank you for tuning in one more time for The Unpopular Opinion. It's the second episode. Stay tuned. There'll be many more to come, and have yourself a very, very Merry Christmas from all of us here at The Unpopular Opinion.